From scoring 3 goals against your own goalie to having your star player beat up a New York cab driver. Every NHL team has experienced some hard, humiliating times, so in this video we're going to be taking a look at the most embarrassing moment for all 32 NHL teams. Let's dive in. The Anaheim Ducks. Over the years, the Anaheim Ducks have appeared in a lot of playoff games. Some of them have been exciting to watch, and others have been downright awful. Game 3 of the 2018 Western Conference quarterfinals versus the San Jose Sharks may be the worst Anaheim Ducks NHL game ever. Game 3 was in San Jose, and the best part of the game was that Anaheim had tied it right before the end of the first period. Nobody expected what happened next. The Sharks would tally 4 goals in the second period and then another 3 in the third. This game felt like it was never going to end, and there were tons of penalties tallying up for both sides. The Ducks would go on to drop this game 8-1. The Arizona Coyotes. Is there anything more embarrassing than literally going bankrupt for a team that faces more than enough criticism for lacking a fan base? The Coyotes filed for bankruptcy in 2009, and their owner planned to sell the team to a buyer who intended to move them into a suburb of Toronto. Of course, League Commissioner Gary Bettman stepped in to keep the team in Phoenix, but not without the embarrassing spectacle that this situation became. Things continue to be embarrassing for the Coyotes franchise as they now play out of an arena that has only 5,000 seats, and it's called Mullet Arena. The Boston Bruins. Now, people love to hate on Brad Marchand, and he has provided us with plenty of embarrassing moments, like skating past the puck in a shootout and losing the game for his team, or even the handful of times he was caught licking other players on the ice. However, as a team, I think the most embarrassing moment came in the 2013 Stanley Cup Finals. The Bruins had won the Cup in 2011, and they were so close to forcing a Game 7 in this series against Chicago until the Blackhawks stunned them with 2 goals in the final minute and 17 seconds of Game 6 to steal the Stanley Cup. Now that has to hurt. The Buffalo Sabres. When the Buffalo Sabres tanked their season in the 2014-2015 season, it was all in an effort to get Connor McDavid. However, the Sabres ended up with Jack Eichel. At the time, Sabres GM Tim Murray was livid that the Sabres did not win the draft lottery after his team had a historically bad season and they had the best odds at getting the first overall pick. Sure, Jack Eichel is no Connor McDavid, but many believed him to be a generational talent as well, and he was definitely a player you can build your team around. Eichel was immediately put in the Sabres roster and flourished. He was far and away their best player, and it looked like better days were on the way for Buffalo. Unfortunately, the losing did not stop. 6 years went by, and the Sabres failed to put together a winning season. Then, Eichel suffered a neck injury and wanted a specific surgery to correct it, but the Sabres refused to allow him to have the procedure. The surgery had never been done to an NHL player before. This began a huge, awkward argument between the Sabres and Eichel, and then finally on November 4th, 2021, the Sabres traded him to the Las Vegas Golden Knights. Jack Eichel is now a Stanley Cup champion. Meanwhile, in Buffalo, the Sabres missed the playoffs for a league record 12th straight time. In 53 years of existence, the Sabres have only appeared in the Stanley Cup Finals twice, losing both times. The way this team handled the Jack Eichel situation was certainly embarrassing to say the least. The Calgary Flames. When Dennis Wideman stepped onto the ice on January 27, 2016, he was in the middle of his 4th season with the Flames. During a game against the Nashville Predators, he would steal headlines after cross-checking linesman Don Henderson from behind after sustaining a hit from Nashville's Mika Solomaki. Henderson would suffer a concussion on the hit and has not officiated an NHL game since. Wideman was handed a 20-game suspension from the league, though that was later decreased to 10 games. Wideman went on to play one more season in Calgary before being released by the team, while Henderson had launched a $10.25 million lawsuit against the former Flames defenseman. The Carolina Hurricanes. The Hurricanes were a pretty new team to make a run all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals in 2002. They were not expected to win it and were taken down by the Wings in just 5 games, but looked pretty happy to be there. So when the 2003 season rolled around and the Hurricanes had a very similar core, fans were expecting them to have a good season. However, that just did not happen. The Hurricanes went on to finish dead last in the league after being just 1 year away from losing in the finals. Their final record that year was 22-43-6. The Chicago Blackhawks. Now we could talk about the Corey Perry story where it was rumored that he had slept with Connor Bedard's mom, but instead let's talk about a classic embarrassing moment that happened involving another superstar from the Blackhawks. In August of 2009, the hockey world was shocked by the news that star player Patrick Kane had been arrested in Buffalo, New York, along with his cousin James. He was charged with allegedly assaulting a 62-year-old cab driver. Initially, the Canes were charged with felony robbery, which could have resulted in significant fines and prison time. However, when the case went to the grand jury, the felony charges were dropped in favor of lesser charges. The charges included assault in the third degree, theft of services, and harassment. Patrick Kane expressed relief that the more serious charges were dropped, stating that it was a positive step. As for the cab driver, he was not seeking jail time for the Canes. Instead, he just wanted a public apology. Patrick Kane and his cousin ultimately pled guilty to a non-criminal violation of disorderly conduct as part of a plea deal which spared them any jail time. This was on the condition that they stayed out of any trouble with the law for 1 year. They were also ordered to offer written apologies to the cab driver. Patrick Kane's attorney continued to defend them, reminding reporters that neither Kane nor his cousin had committed a crime, nor had they been convicted of a crime. Despite this, the incident certainly tarnished Kane's reputation and raised questions about his conduct off the ice. The Colorado Avalanche. The Avalanche fans were treated to some glowing success early on in their history, and it looked like they were going to have another crack at the Stanley Cup after they already won 2 times in 5 years of existence. Not so fast though, because after blowing the 3-2 series lead at home against the rival Detroit Red Wings, the Avalanche got absolutely smoked. Game 7 promised to be a fierce match between Steve Yzerman's stacked Red Wings and Joe Sakic's Avalanche, who already played and won 2 Game 7s that playoffs against the LA Kings and San Jose Sharks. Detroit was the team of destiny that year, having loaded its roster with even more Hall of Fame talent like Brett Hull, Luc Robitaille, and Dominik Hasek. The Avalanche were threatening their run to the Stanley Cup that everyone agreed was Detroit's to lose since the start of the season. Once the game started, the floodgates were opened and Avs goalie Patrick Roy looked stunned. The Red Wings were up 4-0 by the end of the first period. The team never looked back, potting 2 more goals behind Patrick Roy before he was pulled in the second period. This Game 7 ended 7-0. Hasek was credited with the shutout with just 19 saves made. The Red Wings would go on to win their 3rd Stanley Cup championship in just 6 years. The Columbus Blue Jackets. The Blue Jackets have been around since the year 2000, and for the first 7 years of their existence, they never cracked the postseason. To make it worse, the Blue Jackets have never won a playoff round until 2018 when they stunned the world and beat the Tampa Bay Lightning. But that is not the most embarrassing thing to ever happen. No, the most embarrassing thing to happen for Columbus happened in this past offseason when they thought hiring disgraced coach Mike Babcock was a good idea. Mike Babcock has had an interesting career to say the least. For the better part of it, he was looked at as one of the best bench bosses the NHL had to offer. But towards the end of his career, more and more would be revealed about the coach and the way he handled his players. When you think about Babcock, there are a plethora of red flags. The Mitch Marner situation, the situation where he sat Jason Spezza in a home opener, the Mike Modano situation, the Johan Franzen situation. The list goes on. But yet, Columbus still decided to hire him as their head coach anyway and give him a second chance. Well, that second chance didn't even last until the end of the summer, as Babcock was forced to resign after the NHLPA investigated into claims that Babcock had violated players' privacy when he asked to see photos on their cell phones. Babcock didn't even get a chance to practice with the team. The Dallas Stars. Down 2-0 in the Western Conference Final Series against the Vegas Golden Knights, the Stars imploded on home ice, losing 4-0 and losing their cool in the process. It all started to unravel when Captain Jamie Benn was assessed a 5-minute major and a game misconduct after cross-checking Mark Stone while the Golden Knights forward was already laid out on the ice. The Stars seemed to lose it at that point, allowing a goal on the ensuing power play. What else went wrong for the Stars? Evgeny Dadonov sustained a lower body injury in a collision with teammate Roop Hintz. Max Domi was assessed penalties for cross-checking and roughing and a 10-minute game misconduct with 22 seconds left in the second period. Their goalie Jake Oettinger was pulled after allowing 3 goals on 5 shots. It got so bad that Dallas fans started throwing stuff on the ice. Captain Jamie Benn declined to speak to the media after the game, but the Stars released a statement the following day in regards to the popcorn tossing and other debris that hit the ice. This might be the worst game the Dallas Stars have ever played in the playoffs. The Detroit Red Wings. The Red Wings were looking to end their 42-year Cup drought in 1995, but then they got swept in the Stanley Cup Finals. Detroit came into the playoffs as the President Trophy winners with a 33-11-4 record, while the Devils came into the finals as the number 5 seed in the Eastern Conference. The Devils certainly frustrated Detroit in the finals, holding the highly offensive team to just 3 goals in the first 2 games and then 7 goals throughout the whole series. The Devils swept the series in 4-0 to win their first ever Stanley Stanley Cup championship in franchise history in their 21st season as a team. The Edmonton Oilers. Is there anything worse in hockey than scoring a goal on your own net? Well, what about scoring the game winner of a division final on your own net on your own birthday? Now that is a nightmare that Steve Smith lived. In the 1986 postseason, Steve Smith collected the puck and went to make an outlet pass. Unfortunately, he misjudged where Grant Fuhr was in the crease, and the puck glanced off the back of his skate and into the net, giving the Flames a 3-2 lead. The Florida Panthers. On November 30th, 2009, Keith Ballard was furious after Ilya Kovalchuk scored a first-period goal for the Atlanta Thrashers. He was so mad to the point where he took a baseball swing with his stick at the Panthers' net. In doing so, he actually accidentally struck the side of Vokun's head. Vokun was taken off the ice on a stretcher in obvious pain and suffered a lacerated ear. This situation led to calls that Ballard should have been suspended for injuring his own teammate with a high stick. The LA Kings. The Kings had high hopes for the 1995-96 season. They hadn't made the playoffs in the previous 2 seasons, but the team had a new head coach in Larry Robertson and still had Wayne Gretzky. They ended up winning their opening game against the Colorado Avalanche, where Gretzky said after the game, "We're going to have a fun year." Well, that didn't happen because halfway through the season, the team began to implode. Gretzky was still putting up big numbers, but wanted nothing to do with a rebuild. On February 27, 1996, Gretzky was traded to the St. Louis Blues in a deal that really didn't work out great for both sides. It was a sad time for LA fans, as this trade marked the end of the most exciting era in Kings hockey history at that point, and marked the beginning of a long period of struggles for the club. The Minnesota Wild. In 2008, when Marian Gaborik was playing for the Minnesota Wild, he sustained what was called at the time a lower body injury. There was no word on why, just that it was a lower body injury and that he would be considered day-to-day. A few days later, the Wild's GM told a local radio station that Marian Gaborik had actually injured his groin playing hacky sack with some players in the locker room after the game. Now, I don't know what's more embarrassing, playing hacky sack or getting injured playing hacky sack. Either way, this has to be the most embarrassing moment in Wild history. The Montreal Canadiens. Patrick Roy's ugly departure from the Canadiens will forever be remembered and forever be the most embarrassing thing to ever happen to the Canadiens. The Canadiens had a new coach, Mario Tremblay, at the time, and he left Patrick Roy out to dry in a 9-goal thrashing, leaving Patrick Roy looking to the bench wondering when the hell he's going to get off the ice. When he finally got pulled, he made his way over to team president Ron Corey and told him that he just played his last game for the Canadiens. Could you imagine treating your best player like this? Now that was a bad look for Montreal. The Nashville Predators. We're not sure if any team in NHL history has been susceptible to the same amount of trolling the Nashville Predators were when they raised a regular season Western Conference Champions banner in their rafters. They celebrated their 2017-2018 season as they had every reason to. They were a really good team despite falling in the second round to the Winnipeg Jets. So the Preds went on to raise their banners. 2 of them were perfectly fine. 1 of them not so fine. One banner was for winning the Central Division, the other one was for winning the President's Trophy. And then the one on the far right was labeled regular season. The Western Conference champions that year were the Vegas Golden Knights. The regular season Western Conference championship is just not a thing. What it actually means was that the Predators were the West's first seed in the playoffs because they had the best record in the conference, which is an accomplishment made entirely redundant by the neighboring banner, which notes that they had the best record in all of the NHL. Raising up this banner was the team giving themselves a pat on the back, but for everyone else watching, this was a very cringy moment. The New Jersey Devils. Own goals aren't very common in hockey. In any given season, there will likely be a few dozen own goals spread across the league. That's why December 9th, 2018 was such a special situation, as the New Jersey Devils managed to score 3 own goals in a single game. On December 9th, 2018, the Devils were in the middle of a West Coast road trip, and they were facing off against Anaheim. The first own goal that the Devils scored came when the Ducks player centered the puck. The Devils goalie came out of the net, and the puck deflected off a Devils defenseman and went right into the open net. Sure, that's embarrassing, but these things happen. Then there was the second own goal that saw the Ducks lob the puck at the Devils net. A Devils D-man tried to grab the puck, only to change the course of the puck and deflect it right past Corey Schneider. Okay, so that's 2 own goals. How can a third one possibly happen at this point? Well, the third own goal saw a mad scramble in front of the Devils net with just minutes left in the game. A Devils D-man tried to bat the puck out of the way, only to bat it into his own net past Corey Schneider. The Devils scored 3 goals against themselves in a 5-6 shootout loss to the Anaheim Ducks. The Devils legitimately outscored the Ducks at scoring against the Devils. That is how embarrassing this moment is. The New York Islanders. In the spring of 1995, Islanders GM Don Maloney wanted to change the direction of the team and traded Pierre Turgeon and defenseman Vladimir Malakhov to the Canadians for center Kirk Muller, defenseman Matthew Schneider, and center Craig Darby. Trading away Pierre Turgeon, who was the heart and soul of the Islanders, was a huge mistake. This deal was a disaster and marked the beginning of a 23-year run without a playoff series win for the franchise. The New York Rangers. March 3rd, 2004 is a day that is remembered forever as a day that the Rangers turned their back on the greatest player to ever wear their uniform. It was the day that the Rangers traded Brian Leetch to the Toronto Maple Leafs. Headed for a 7th straight year of missing the playoffs, the Rangers GM decided to go for broke and unload all the team's assets at the trade deadline. In just 7 days, the Rangers made 9 moves, trading Brian Leetch, Alex Kovalev, Peter Nedved, Vladimir Malakhov, UC Markkanen, Matthew Barnaby, Chris Simon, Greg DeVries, Martin Ruchinski, and Paul Healy. The Rangers got 15 players and 6 draft picks in return. Now, if a wholesome purge ever didn't work, it was this one. In exchange for all those players, the new acquisitions played all of 518 games for the Rangers, scoring 37 goals and totaling 87 points. The 2 goalies played 41 games and had a record of 14 wins and 17 losses. Of the 6 draft picks, the only one to make it to the NHL was defenseman Michael Sauer, who only played 98 games in a little over a year before being forced into early retirement due to concussions. Alex Kovalev alone went on to play 479 more games in the NHL, scoring 139 goals and 352 points. The Ottawa Senators. Now, this is one of the most unbelievable stories that has ever come out of the NHL. The wife of Ottawa Senator superstar defenseman Erik Karlsson made shocking accusations that had very serious implications for her husband's teammate, Mike Hoffman. According to a stunning report from the Ottawa Citizen, Melinda Karlsson had accused Hoffman's longtime girlfriend, Monica Carrick, of orchestrating a campaign of harassment against her and her husband following the death of their unborn child during the 2017-2018 season. Their unborn son was stillborn back in March of 2018, but according to an order of protection that has been filed by Melinda Karlsson, she alleged that Carrick has been harassing her family since November of 2017. In a sworn statement, Melinda Karlsson laid out some heinous accusations against Carrick, saying Monica Carrick has uttered numerous statements wishing my unborn child dead. She also uttered that she wished I was dead and that someone should take out my husband's legs to end his career. Melinda went on to say Monica Carrick has posted over 1,000 negative and derogatory statements about me as a professional. Following this drama, in a very strange move, Erik Karlsson lashed out at a user on social media who had mocked him and his wife after they lost their unborn son. The user, identified only as Sandy Dandy 45, had made a stunning accusation against Melinda Karlsson and effectively blamed her for the death of her child. One of the more bizarre aspects of Karlsson's response was not only the fact that he responded to a seemingly random user on social media, but that he also seemed to have some level of familiarity with the person he was responding to. Here is what Karlsson had to say. How dare you? You have been making fake accounts and buying hacked ones for months to harass me and my wife, but this is an all-new low even for you. You are a disgusting person. The Philadelphia Flyers. For Flyers fans, the 2006-2007 season was a complete and utter mistake. The Flyers began the season 1-6-1, a dismal start that led to the firings of head coach Ken Hitchcock and GM Bobby Clarke. The agonizing season would include a 10-game losing streak and exactly 0 wins at home in the months of December and January. The Flyers would set an NHL record for drop-off in points, going from 101 points in the 2005-2006 season to just 56 points the following season. The Pittsburgh Penguins. Unfortunately, this is a pretty sad story. Back in the late 60s, Penguins owner Jack McGregor had an idea to use a live mascot during the games. Penguin Pete came on loan from the Pittsburgh Zoo, and pushing the limits, the franchise owner wanted to see if the penguin could actually learn how to skate. They went as far as ordering the penguin custom CCM skates to accommodate his unique foot structure. Now, obviously, this didn't work, and unfortunately, Pete ended up coming down with pneumonia. He was returned to the Pittsburgh Zoo and died soon after. The San Jose Sharks. The Sharks' playoff collapse versus the LA Kings in 2014 was simply brutal. They led the series 3-0, losing, and then they went on to lose the next 4 games, making unwanted history. No single play made a bigger difference than the controversial goal the Kings scored late in Game 6 to take the 2-1 lead. With 8 minutes to go and the score tied, the Kings' Robin Regeer fired a shot towards the net, which appeared to get saved by goalie Alex Stalock. Williams clearly pushes the goalie, the puck then came loose and crossed the goal line. The Sharks, who had been outplayed since the end of Game 3, desperately needed some puck luck. However, they wouldn't get any and the call went to the Kings. The Kings went on to add 2 more goals for a 4-1 win. The Sharks season ended 2 days later in San Jose, while the Kings went on to hoist the Stanley Cup. The Seattle Kraken. The 2022-23 season was a big step in the Kraken's development with a 46-28-8 record, resulting in 100 points and a playoff spot, including a first-round victory over the Avalanche and a hard-fought second-round loss to the Dallas Stars in 7 games. Now, unfortunately for the Kraken, this season has gone a little bit differently. The Kraken got off to a terrible start with being shut out twice in their first 4 games and having only scored once in the other 2 games. Their current record as we make this video is 8-13-6, and they are currently on a 6-game losing streak. Yes, this is only their 3rd season in the league, but I think we were all expecting a much better start to the year after their historic postseason run. The St. Louis Blues. St. Louis Blues defenseman Erik Johnson, who was the #1 pick in the 2006 draft, ended up tearing 2 ligaments in his right knee during a golf outing and missed his entire sophomore season. Johnson, who was 20 at the time, was injured during a team golf outing on September 16 when his right foot was caught between the accelerator and the brake of his golf cart. I mean, don't they let like 12-year-olds drive the golf cart? How did this even happen? In Johnson's rookie season, he played 69 games and had 33 points. He was considered to be the centerpiece of the team's youth movement, so it is an understatement to say how this embarrassing moment derailed the franchise's progress. The Tampa Bay Lightning. The Tampa Bay Lightning ended up on the wrong side of NHL history, getting swept in the first round of the playoffs after one of their best regular seasons ever. The Columbus Blue Jackets capped a stunning sweep of the President Trophy winners with a 7-3 victory. This made Tampa Bay the first team in the expansion era, which began in the 67-68 season, to go winless in the first round of the playoffs after leading the league in points during the regular season. Tampa Bay actually tied the NHL record for wins with 62 and amassed 128 points, which was good for 4th in NHL history. The Blue Jackets, meanwhile, didn't even clinch the second Eastern Conference wildcard spot until their 81st game that year. The Blue Jackets certainly outplayed the Lightning with a smothering forecheck and stellar goaltending by Sergei Bobrovsky. The Toronto Maple Leafs. With so many cringeworthy moments to choose from, the most glaring of which being the fact that they haven't won a Stanley Cup since 1967, it is so hard to choose just one. Another embarrassing moment that comes to mind is when Daryl Sittler cut the C off his jersey. However, that is not the moment we're talking about either. Those were all pretty brutal, but they're not nearly as embarrassing as the epic collapse against the Boston Bruins in Game 7 of the 2013 playoffs. The Leafs had a 4-1 lead with 5 minutes to go. After a 9-year postseason hiatus, it looked like Toronto was set for a playoff run. But then, an epic collapse happened. The Bruins scored 3 goals in quick succession to tie the game 4-4. The game went on to overtime, and Boston centerman Patrice Bergeron, who had the game-tying goal, scored just 6 minutes and 5 seconds into OT to leave the Leafs and their fans absolutely stunned. The Vancouver Canucks. Listen, losing 4-0 in the 7th game of the Stanley Cup Series is humiliating. 2011 really seemed like it was going to be the Vancouver Canucks' year to win the Stanley Cup, and everything was going according to plan until they absolutely blew it against the Bruins in the final fateful game. While all that is certainly embarrassing, it's not nearly as humiliating as the fact that their fans actually rioted after the game and basically burnt down their city. That was truly an embarrassing moment. Now we have to give an honorable mention to a close second moment here when Vancouver hired John Tortorella in 2013. Midway through the season in January of 2014, Tortorella crossed the line big time when the Calgary Flames made a hard hit on one of his players. The Flames were resting during the first intermission of the game, and to their shock, Tortorella stormed into their dressing room to scream at the players, even trying to punch a few, and had to be restrained by players and coaches from both sides. Tortorella was suspended 15 games without pay and was fired as head coach of Vancouver at the end of this season. The Vegas Golden Knights. In a shocking move that few saw coming, the Vegas Golden Knights traded their goalie Marc-Andre Fleury to the Chicago Blackhawks in exchange for minor league forward Mikael Hakkarainen. That's right, you heard that correct. The reigning Vezina Trophy winner was dealt for absolutely nothing. Fleury did take home the Vezina that season, putting up a remarkable .928 save percentage in 36 games played, while leading the Golden Knights to the third round of the playoffs. Fleury went on to spend just part of the 2021-22 season with the Chicago Blackhawks before being dealt to the Minnesota Wild. Fleury is clearly going to be a Hall of Famer one day, and trading him for nothing is a crazy, embarrassing move. The Washington Capitals. Now for the Caps, we can certainly talk about the dumpster fire that was their inaugural season, or we can do something a little more current involving both Sidney Crosby and Alexander Ovechkin. It was the 2009 Eastern Conference semifinals, and it was Sid versus Ovi, both on the hunt for their first Stanley Cup. Adding to the excitement, they were going into Game 7. Unfortunately, the Washington Capitals could not show up for this game. They put up a pathetic fight and ended up losing the game a very underwhelming 6-2, but the game was basically over after the second period when they trailed 5-0. The Winnipeg Jets. No modern NHL goalie has ever had a worse day than Jets goalie Doug Soetart. The Winnipeg Jets netminder allowed 15 goals back in 1981 in a loss to the Minnesota North Stars. Soetart actually allowed no goals through the game's first 15 minutes before letting in just 2 first-period goals. He went on to allow 8 goals in the second and 5 in the third. Although the team's coach and defenders accept their part of the blame, Doug Soetart reportedly left the arena without saying a word to his teammates. Thanks for watching our videos. Don't forget to leave a like, and if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button.